you have force multiply, which is really what von Clausewitz was getting to. He was talking about going from one soldier versus one soldier, and they just battle it out. And he was saying, well, let's take that one soldier and put him on a horse. Now we've got speed and maneuverability. And while we've got that one soldier, let's give him not only a sword, but let's give him a carbine. Now he's got multiple weapon systems. And now let's combine arms. That was his idea of
Right.
force multiplication 200 years ago. I've just applied that same thinking to marketing. And all of a sudden you become very budget friendly, oddly.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion. My words got power, my thoughts have action. Motivation, stay gracious. That's greatness. Be audacious. Be audacious.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where we empower you to live your best audacious life ever. I'm your host, Audley Stevenson, and as always, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us on this journey of inspiration and growth. Now, in today's episode, we're exploring the fascinating intersection of military strategy and business acumen with our remarkable guest, Mr. Lee Pepper. Just like a skilled general leveraging force multiplication on the battlefield, we can amplify our marketing impact through collaboration and timely decision making. And Lee will further explain that because it's fascinating, the connection between the two. In the corporate world, the ability to make quick and informed choices is critical. Like a soldier navigating uncertain terrain, every decision matters. We'll also unpack how fostering alignment between marketing and other departments can transform your organization into a well-oiled, adaptable machine. And just as a successful military campaign requires careful planning and contingency strategies, so too does building a thriving business. Now, Lee, today's guest, is celebrated. He's a celebrated author, strategist, and veteran who's masterfully translated military principles into the business world. His mission, well, is to equip emerging leaders with the tools they need to ensure they're never outmatched in their pursuits. With deep experience across both military and marketing landscapes, Lee's here to share practical insights to help you sharpen your leadership edge and elevate your professional game. So without any further ado, let's turn into our conversation with Lee Pepper. Enjoy. Hey, Lee, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. So thank you.
Happy to be with you, and I love the name of your podcast. I mean, I love everything that you're doing, and I love the background setup you have there.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
you're doing some good work.
I appreciate that. And the podcast, it's funny. It was kind of just birthed out of, it's funny how things kind of line up and come together, right? And so I'll give you the really, really quick synopsis here. We all remember 2020 and, what that brought for us and what it took from us, if you will. And I at the time was kind of going through my own sort of thing, trying to figure out what the thing, not realizing the things I'm missing is what was wrong with me. I just knew I wasn't feeling good. And when I realized, hey, this thing that I used to love a lot, can't do it anymore. What else can I replace it with? Podcasting seemed natural to me because I've done it many, many times before. It was like riding a bike, so I jumped on. But I also wanted to focus on what was important to what mattered to me. And I kind of did this really quick snapshot of my life and look back and, I identified sort of every strength, win, success, accomplishment. It came on the strength of some sort of audacity. And that's as simple as that. And everything else is history. And it's for me, it's because it's been so impactful in my life. It's like, yeah, we need to get other people to understand, like, this is significant stuff and it matters. And you got to take that step. You got to make that move. You got to make that, have the courage to make that bold decision, because it's not only beneficial for yourself, but for the rest of the world. And so that's kind of been the mission. We've, 500 plus episodes and still going. And it's been a blessing from my perspective. So yeah, thank you for that. And I will say that my first name in Audacious, it just happened. It was a happenstance. It wasn't no marketing geniuses thought of it, not like that. People always say to me, how did you come up with that? I just went with it. But I think that's how it's supposed to be, right? So that's what I did.
Well, that's when I saw the name of your podcast. When I was first getting connected with you, I was like, this is one that I really want to be on, because, that's a lot of what I get into in my book. I have this quote that's kind of like my tagline that's determined today that in the face of adversity you will never be outmatched. And that's why I love the whole idea of audacity. And so I think it's a perfect combination.
I love it. I love it. I love it, and I love the even the title "Never Outmatch" is something that kind of gets me excited. We're gonna get in the book. Perhaps these a starting point. If I can get you just to introduce yourself to our audience, talk about a little bit of your journey, what's got you to, and what's got you to the point that you're at now.
Sure. And thank you so much. I mean, I'm Lee Pepper. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I think, I've written this book called Never Outmatched, and it's basically chronicles the military strategies that I learned when I first joined the Army and how I applied those strategies into my corporate, world and into my corporate success. And I think that I wrote the book because I feel like there's a lot of younger leaders that sometimes lack the voice. They have great ideas, but maybe they lack the voice, maybe a little bit of the wisdom. And so I try to apply these military strategies into mental models that can be used in your everyday business.
And the marketing feel is sort of where you sort of hang your hat, and so I sort of love the idea of you sort of taking these sort of tactical battlefield tactics, if you will, and melding them together with this sort of modern marketing. I'd love if you had sort of an example of something you can share where you combine the two and kind of what that looked like and what the outcome was.
Yeah, so one of the things I think one of the popular chapters and the folks that have read the advanced copies is this military strategy called the Anvil and Hammer. And I always like to start off with this because I think it's pretty easy to understand. And it was recently used in the first Gulf War by Norman Schwarzkopf. So it's a very ancient battle strategy. But you have this idea of the anvil. And in that battle, Norman Schwarzkopf lined up all of the Allied forces along the Kuwaiti-Saudi border. That caused Saddam Hussein to make sure he had to align the vast majority of his forces along that same front. So that was the anvil. It was a holding. And then it was the 7th Corps and the 101st Airborne that then swept around in this, what he called the famous left hook, that outflanked the Iraqis and caused that battle to only last just for a mere amount of days. And I've applied this into marketing because a lot of times in marketing, we will have something that's the anvil. It's not necessarily designed to win, to convert,
Right.
but it has to be there so that it keeps your opponent, the other companies that you're competing with, they have to respond in kind, and then you come in with your hammer force, right, to outflank the competition. And what I applied that in my business is that we would be meeting with our C-suite, with our accounting team, our CFO. And a lot of times there would be these questions, well, why don't we cut this? Because this doesn't seem to be converting very well. And if you don't have this strategy and can communicate it, you might lose your anvil. You might be doing some things in your business or your marketing to kind of hold that front there while your hammer comes in, and it'll get cut. And your hammer can't win unless you have the anvil. And so sometimes people that are younger leaders, they don't have the voice, they haven't communicated the strategy, and so their anvil gets cut, and then they wonder in a few months what happened to their marketing because the hammer can't win by itself.
It needs a support.
Yes.
So out of curiosity then, how do you respond to that? So what is a tactical response to that approach?
Yeah. So, what happens I think with young leaders, and this book is a marketing book, but it's also a leadership book. And so I think what happens is you get cognitive bias, and we have to recognize that some of these other departments will have a cognitive bias. Marketing is always suffering from this because a lot of people think they know marketing. Even though they may be HR professionals, finance professionals, even your C-suite, if they have not studied marketing or been experienced in marketing, they can have this cognitive bias where they think they know. And it'll be things like, oh, well, my cousin builds websites, or, my sister-in-law does social media.
Yeah.
It must be easy. Right. And so what happens is they apply these cognitive biases, and then things get shifted around, things get cut. And as the young leader, you sometimes feel powerless. So I always applied these military strategies. And a lot of times the C-suite, the CEO would be like, he would rock back in his chair and go, oh goodness, Lee's quoting Patton and Caesar now. So we might as well just go ahead and give up. But I think it just helps for young leaders and for business owners to understand that tactics don't always win. You have to have the strategy. And I use this example of in the military, everybody knows how to shoot. but nobody wins a war just because they know how to shoot. And that's what
Mhm.
we see today in a lot of marketing when
Mhm.
you have these other departments that are weighing in who may not know that they start running off in all these different directions. Oh, we need to go do TikTok. We need to go do Instagram
Right.
Reels. And those may be very valid things you want to do,
Right.
but you have to have the overall strategy
Right.
first. You can't just be running off doing these little tactics and try them for a week and then, oh,
Right.
that didn't work, and then you move on.
So that I'd love then, and I think the conversation is going here, but that's the beauty of a conversation. It goes where it goes. So that I'd love then to tell me how do you get that buy-in from those other areas, those other departments, to understand the big picture, right? Like in terms of what marketing is, because as I see it, from my perspective, marketing is the support mechanism to these other extensions. They support the
Yeah,
work.
sure. And that is, I think that's a good analogy for some. But what I like to always position is that marketing can be the lead. They can be
Okay.
the leader. And here's a great example. A lot of times we're doing things on our websites in digital marketing. We're doing things where we have to write a blog post, as an example, for search engine optimization. Well, while we're writing that article, why don't we interview our staff? Especially in the kind of work I do in healthcare, why don't we interview our nurses, our doctors, our behavioral health providers? And now all of a sudden we're quoting them in the article. It's not just
Mhm.
generic SEO
Right.
content.
Right.
And by doing that, now all of a sudden I am solving a retention problem for the company because now I'm promoting our staff. And all of a sudden, I'm transitioning what was just going to be a marketing SEO push, but now I'm bringing in HR and I'm solving one of their problems with staffing. And in healthcare, it's super expensive to replace people. So
Yes.
why not promote and make our company the employer of choice?
Choice.
And so
Yes.
all of a sudden, I'm solving the retention problem, and I'm also helping HR with their recruiting problem. Because in the States, a lot of times HR gets stuck. Oh, we'll just post it on Indeed, and that's a terrible way to recruit. It's a lot better if you involve your marketing team, give
Yes.
them some of your HR, but you have to give them some budget because marketing doesn't work for free. But
Right.
give them a little bit of budget, and they can do amazing things for you and help you solve your problem. And now all of the sudden, marketing is leading, it's helping HR solve a problem.
Got you. And what I love about that is the fact that people are working together. You got these departments that maybe historically aren't in lock and sync, are actually are in this instance. And when you profile the employees, you're also sort of contributing. So again, to the retention for sure and recruitment, but it's also contributing to the culture of the organization. Where it's like I'm a part of this. They want to hear
Yes.
from me, and I what I have to say matters.
And I have a chapter in the book that gets into more detail on this. It's called Citizen Farmer, Citizen Soldier. And I think what happens is for a young leader in marketing, they need this language, this strategy. And so back in ancient times, the Romans, I start off with the Romans, they didn't have a large standing army. But during times of war, they would call up their citizen farmers to now join the military. And then, we did the same thing in the US during the American Revolution. We were fighting the British. I mean, we had our Minutemen. Okay.
Mhm.
These were people that had normal jobs. And so we can apply that same strategy to our companies. And all of a sudden, we can look at our employees as being the citizen farmers that we need to convert during times of need to
Love it.
citizen soldiers. And now
Love
all
it.
of a sudden, you've got just normal staff who don't think of themselves as marketers. All of a
Right.
sudden, marketing is helping explain how they can help the business. And it's a lot better to spend our marketing dollars investing in our own staff
Mhm.
to accomplish our marketing mission than just going out and just buying random ads or,
Yep.
or doing different deals.
To your point again, you're hitting two birds at one stone, and I think
Yes.
that's a fantastic approach, and it obviously hey, it's a great way of saving resources, so to speak, as well too.
Yes, absolutely.
Give for our audience, can you give an idea just the extent of your military background? I was it was 8 or 9 years that you served as an officer. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Is that
Yes, I mean not yeah. So I enlisted when I was 19 years old. I had a year of college. I took a year off. I enlisted in the United States Army. Then I served in the reserves. And then as I was getting close to graduation back then, you could when you got within a year of graduating, you could get your commission. The
okay?
Army was assuming that you were going to go ahead and finish out. And so I went through officer candidate school, was commissioned. Then when I graduated, I went to armor basic course, which is where I trained at Fort Knox, to command M1 battle tanks. And then I was assigned to a civil affairs unit. And then I spent most of, that was the end of my time. I was in from 88 to 96.
Okay.
And then that is where I really started thinking about these things that I've learned. And I write about it in the book. The very first military strategy that I applied in my business was something called force multiplication.
Okay.
That Karl von Clausewitz was an 18th century Prussian general. He was a contemporary to Napoleon. He wrote a book called On War, and we first read that book when I was in armor school. And so I think early on in my business career, I started having these interesting connections, and I would think about, how would von Clausewitz deal with this? And that just kind of then led me down the path of kind of diving deeper into. There's a lot of things I learned in the military
Yep.
that could transition into my business career, and so that's another element of my writing is that I hope that some people who are veterans that are transitioning out, this might help give them a little bit of voice or give
Mhm.
them a little bit of thought to say, huh, there are some things that I've learned, and here's how I could communicate that to employers, because I do think that we have a difficult time, especially for
Yes.
people that have been in for a long time. How does your military training and your experience
Yep.
translate into the business world? So I hope that they will read this and think about a little more broadly, like, oh, I see how that could
Yeah.
translate.
Yeah. Yeah. When you first discovered that the applicability, if you will, I'd imagine it was kind of like mind blowing. Like, oh my gosh! And you can see like because you're now seeing it through your lens, which is very different than most, right?
Yeah, the very first time, it was 2010. I remember specifically, and I
Okay.
write about this in part of the book. It was 2010. We had just been was with a company called Foundations Recovery Network. I was their first chief information officer, and then I was their chief marketing officer. And we were having some success. And you have to remember, this is 15 years ago when social media was just starting. In fact, we were still doing MySpace back then, and digital marketing and SEO was just becoming a thing. And we had some very early success at Foundations, transitioning from the yellow pages, which is what the bulk of their marketing was when I first joined, into digital marketing. So
You
our
realize, Lee,
private,
you realize, Lee, some people will be like, what are the yellow pages? There'll be a segment of the audience. They'll be like, huh?
oddly, I have a talk that I do where I actually have a yellow pages, from that time. I got it on eBay, and I actually show it. I show our ad that we had in the yellow pages, and it's a huge, thick book. And during my talk, I drop it on the floor to say, it's now a doorstop. But there's a lot of people that come up after that talk, Ollie. They will come up and want to flip through it because they've never touched one.
It's like, where'd you get it from? A museum, right? Like, where'd you get it from?
And it's crazy that back then we were spending $1 million a year
Oh,
advertising on the yellow pages. And this is one of these things that when you're a young marketer coming into a company, you can't just flip the switch. And this is
mm,
this is the challenge that I think young people, young marketers, young leaders have. You may know and may see the vision, and we're experiencing this with AI now.
yep,
It doesn't mean that the older leaders of the company, maybe the founders, maybe your sponsors, they may not be ready to just flip it. So you have to develop a strategy to be able to kind of walk them through this transition, which is what I
yes,
did successfully at Foundations. And based on that, I got invited to come speak in Chicago at a big summit with our private equity sponsors. And that was where I first delivered a talk where I started thinking or presenting some of these military strategies that I had employed. And I found that it resonated with the audience, especially the older leaders. Now, all of
mhm,
a sudden, this wasn't Lee Pepper just demanding that we switch over to social media or demanding we switch over into digital marketing
right.
just because it was a fad, that it was just FOMO. No, this was rooted in deep military strategies that I had transitioned into these corporate mental models.
Got you, got you. I would imagine that your tolerance to risk or taking chances um, is a bit different than maybe most because of the military experience. I mean, and again, that's an assumption I throw out there, and I would love to get
Mhm.
your comment on that. But in terms of how that factors into your work in the business world, is there applicability there as well?
No, absolutely. I think that the worst decision that you can make in business, and it applies in the military too, is no decision. And the
Mm,
very first couple of weeks that I was at armor school, I had never been inside a tank before, never driven a tank before.
Right.
And so when you're put in there and you're going through that training, there is a sergeant that's sitting on top, outside the hull, outside the hatch, and he's sitting on a chair that's welded. It's a
Okay.
job that nobody would want, but that's how you get trained.
Right.
And he's mic'd up and he's in your ear and he's counting down, Lieutenant, what are you going to do now? And he's counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's this pressure cooker, right? And the whole thing is that you have to make a decision. And it's not about making the right decision, if there was such a thing. It was that you're making a decision. Go left, go right, go forward, call for whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's what they were trying to drill into us. You have to make a decision. We're not hired in business to maintain the status quo.
Right.
We're hired to move and hopefully move forward, in a revenue generating way. That's what marketing can really do. And so I think that the risk tolerance is that in the military, it's very innovative and creative, because when you're in a training exercise or when you're in the
Right.
battlefield, things are changing constantly. The weather might all of a sudden come in. You might lose communication.
Yep.
You might not have enough troops. You might be outnumbered. So you have to commit that you're never going to be outmatched. Same thing in business. We're never going to have enough budget, enough scope, enough geography. Maybe we don't have the features and functions in our applications that we want. But guess what? We have to determine that we're not going to be outmatched, and we have to go figure it out. And that's where I think leadership really comes into play, especially with millennials. Oddly,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to tell them kind of what the goal is, what the mission is, and let them go accomplish it. Not tell them what to do every step of the way, because in the
Yeah.
military they don't do that. They train
Right.
you,
Yes.
and you know what your rules of engagement are.
Yep.
But when you're in the moment, you have to make the decision.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes it's a series of decisions that you make. So it's not always the right decision that moment. It's this decision, because that may lead to another one, and change a course of direction. But you still have to make that decision, to your point.
I used to always tell my teams, I want them experimenting, like back in the days with early social media. When MySpace was the king for a minute. You have to be out there experimenting. You have to be out there saying, okay, what is this Facebook? And you have to test. And it's the same thing today with AI. We have to be testing what's going on with generative, engineering optimization, and what's going on with AEO. And if we're not testing, and testing doesn't mean we bet the farm, but we have to be testing. And if something doesn't work out, we need to honor it and say, hey, that didn't work out. We know that we don't do that, but we don't kill the messenger. You don't want to kill your young leader that's out there experimenting.
Got you. And I'm imagining the same could be said for like planning or contingency planning or backup planning as well. That you still have to have a plan in place.
Yeah.
Much like you still have to make a decision.
I think I had the quote in my book from Eisenhower. Plans are worthless, but planning, that's what's key. Because if you'll go through the planning, and I have a chapter on wargaming. I don't know if you saw this chapter, but this is an important concept that a lot of companies don't do. But you do have the ability to work with your teams to war game out lots of different scenarios. And when I was in school, there in Fort Knox, we had sand tables.
Okay.
We're moving
Yep.
tanks and soldiers around. Now we have all these amazing online tools, but we can war game out scenarios in our businesses so that when something happens, we're not caught flat-footed. We may not have the perfect answer, but we've seen it before. And so we now know what to go do, but so many businesses don't do that. And a lot of times, and I worked in IT for many years, a lot of times by not doing that, all of a sudden you have some breach, and then we're running around with our heads cut off going, what do I do? What do I do? But if you war game it, you at least know those first few hours of what you're going to do.
And I think also too, when you have a plan in place that you can fall back on, it sort of addresses those sort of emotional reactions that you have when something first happens. Oh my gosh, what do we do now? And it's like, wait a second, like we've gone through these scenarios, we've talked about these possibilities, and part of planning is like the worst case situation too, right? And so if you equip for that, then if something happens, if it's not the worst case, you're laughing because you're ready for it, right?
We used to do, when I was at Foundations, we had 4 national conferences. One of them was in West Palm Beach.
Okay.
We had to war game out what happens if a hurricane comes through.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we might as well have the conversation now, because when it happens, it's too late when it's happening, and then nobody knows what to do and what the strategy is. So
Gotcha.
we would regularly go through what happens if our keynote doesn't show up.
What if?
You know,
Yeah.
what happens if the lights go out during the podcast interview? I
That's
mean,
it. What if? What if? Right? We pause it. We go over. We wave our hands. The light goes back on. There we go. Right.
exactly.
But I just think just that frame of thinking, it equips you in ways that you're just ready, right? So even if the worst happens, you're ready, because we all know that when we're emotional, that's the worst possible time to make an important decision, because we're not thinking clearly.
Especially when you're leading a team and you've got younger people, newer people, this is their opportunity to learn. This is you helping them so that when you're in the crisis, all of a sudden, if you've got somebody new in your team and you're in crisis mode, they can't help you. They don't have the experience, the wisdom. But if you will war game some of these scenarios, now all of a
Yep.
sudden you're giving them the chance to really shine. And then
Mm.
and then I think that starts to take a little bit of the pressure off, and it lets them know, kind of long term, kind of what kind of the way you lead and the way your
Yep.
teams operate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You mentioned foundations a couple times, and Foundation Recovery Network is where you worked, and you sort of played a pivotal role in helping to kind of grow, I guess, the shareholder market share, or value rather. I'd love to know kind of maybe one or two or three things that you did there that contributed greatly to your success there.
Yeah, I mean, for your listeners who don't know, I mean, Foundations Recovery Network was a very small mom and pop recovery group. It was based here in Nashville. They switched from a nonprofit to a for-profit, so they were hiring, and then they had gotten an investment from a private equity firm in Chicago called Sterling Partners. So they were just starting to build out their C-suite. So they hired a new CEO, they hired me, they hired a CFO. And this was the chance to start growing because they specialized in something called dual diagnosis. It was treating the substance use
Mm.
along with the mental health challenge. That was the term dual diagnosis.
Yep,
Is
yep.
we're going to treat not only the alcohol or the drug problem, but we're also going to peel back that onion and figure out what's going on in the brain. And so that was kind of some new stuff that we were working on. And so we were expanding. We were creating centers around the country. And so for us, transitioning from the yellow pages to digital marketing, there
Right.
was there was this confluence of, okay, we see kind of the future, but how do we pay for it? Right?
Right.
And so that's a lot of what I was able to use these military strategies to make sure that we were able to start moving that budget from yellow pages into digital marketing and start moving. We were also spending a lot of money on television and start moving some of that into hiring business development reps, people on the ground. And I think for me, the biggest thing was that I had math. So I created very detailed budgets that matriculated all the way through to what our cost per acquisition was, or what we call cost
Okay.
per admit. And I was very transparent. If we had a bad month, I was the first one to say we didn't have a good month, and here's why. And this is what we're doing to fix it. I think a lot of times people get stuck in trying to defend something.
Right.
And I'll
Right.
be the first to say, if I try something that doesn't work, I'm the first to say it didn't work.
Right.
Because, yeah, I made the decision, but I'm also the best person placed to make the decision to get us out of that. And
Okay.
that's sometimes what young leaders, because the board might be yelling at them or their CEO might be yelling at them, they need to know it's not personal. It's
Right.
just business.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you do have a failure in a month or a quarter, they're still relying on you to solve it, to get them out of it. And that's something that I was always fortunate that our leadership and our private equity sponsors always had that. We didn't have, not every month was easy,
Sure.
uh,
Sure.
but they did believe in me and the way that I approached it, to get us through some of the lean times.
Well, and I think it goes back to the early point we made around decision making. Sometimes it's not that initial decision, it's the decision after the decision, or maybe
Hmm.
it's the decision after the setback or the
Hmm.
failure or the obstacle, whatever. That's what matters the most. Not how many times you fall, it's getting back up.
Right. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah,
And
no,
I
no,
think a lot of people they don't sometimes when you're in the corporate world
mhm.
and you get a lot of pressure, you have to understand that there's nobody cheering harder for you than your leadership team. They may
Right.
have tough conversations and they may, they may be putting a lot of pressure on you, but there is nobody else they want to succeed more than you. And it's hard sometimes psychologically for us to understand that. But that's certainly the way it was in the military, because if you're the lieutenant, if you're the captain, if you're leading, they want you to succeed. Believe
Yes,
me.
yeah, 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 yeah.
What other option do they have? They've invested all these dollars in training you and getting you the experience, and it's the same thing in the corporate world.
I do really feel like I'm glad that you made that point on it not being personal. It is just business, and
Yeah.
I think if you walk it and frame it as such, you're even mentally you're preparing yourself because okay, because like everyone can dollars and cents and bottom line, everyone gets that right. If it's it's under a certain number and it's not where you're supposed to be, you can
Mhm.
speak to that. It's in front of everyone, right? So keeping that in mind,
And
I think
and
is a real good approach.
and Ollie, I don't know if you have kids, but I have two sons,
Yep.
and it's kind of similar in families. Sometimes we have to have hard conversations with our kids, and we have to have those hard conversations, but we love them
It doesn't
unconditionally.
change it. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. I did see in your book that you referenced sort of famous leaders in history, right? Caesar, Joan of Arc, or a couple of mentioned.
Yep.
I'd love to sort of. So, I mean, and I got to say, first and foremost, leadership is by far kind of one of my favorite topics to discuss because of the type of impact it can have. And so, for example, if you lined up 10 people and you said, "Hey, tell me your favorite leader," no one would have any problem shooting up their hand and go. If you ask that next question, is okay, what do you like about them or what did you appreciate about them? You'll oftentimes hear things like they listened to me, they were empathetic, they understood things that are within our reach as individuals, right? Not things that excluded for those in leadership positions. And so that really speaks to the type of impact that it can have. Excuse me. And so, so on that line, I'd love to hear sort of maybe some leaders that you kind of look at and what resonates from you and things that you take from and incorporate into your own style.
Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned one that I love the story of Joan of Arc, and she is a very popular figure in modern culture, and especially in Europe. But what I got from reading a lot about her story and studying her story, and I think this is applicable to a lot of people in business, is that her one idea. She had one really good idea in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and that idea was she went to King Philip, and she just said, could we just go on the offense? Instead of playing defense and trying to negotiate with England, could we just attack one day? And that one idea was just, she didn't even necessarily present to him the tactical part of it. Well, we're
Right.
going to attack here with this many. It was just a mindset. Could we have permission to just attack this one part of the city that they had been defending, for many many years, and that sometimes is lost on us because sometimes we're so worried about all the little details that we forget kind of the bigger picture. So I think that's what I was really inspired from Joan of Arc's story was that she had the gall to go and present that one kind of big idea was that can we just attack today? And
That's
so
all I
I,
want to
I
do.
I think that in business that can sometimes we can get kind of myopic or we can get in this, we're just kind of doing the same thing in and out, in and out. And that's why I say to people, you're not hired to maintain the status quo. Don't put a status quo plaque,
Yep.
on your desk
Right.
because you need to be thinking about how you can go on the offensive. And of course, I love studying George Patton, and for those of you that may not want to read all the biographies, you can definitely watch the movie. It still holds up very well. But that was his whole notion was that he was going to take the battle to the Nazis. He was going to maintain contact with them. He was never holding anything. He
Mhm.
just wanted to be attacking them. And I think that that's important metaphors in business.
Yeah. No, I think it is, and for me, I just love the applicability, right? Where you can draw from, and it does very much apply to the modern world. And yes, we're using war references and battle references and things that were intended for the battlefield, but there's still applicability. And I mean, your book speaks to that. It's all over it's all over. And I would imagine when people kind of see it coming, they're going, okay. Here's Lee. What's he gonna, what's he bringing now, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Is that? I'm sure it's been fun sometimes, fun conversations.
Well, yeah, and that's what, oddly with this book, I mean, it's I'm taking these military strategies and I'm translating them into mental models that people can understand. And I think that that's really that was kind of where I was targeting a certain audience. And that I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the United States, less than 1% of Americans will serve in one of the branches of the military. That's
Okay.
not a judgment. That's just where we are with an all volunteer army. So the way I think about it, I go, wow, that means 99% of our country has never heard these things. And so that's a pretty good area to go play when you're trying to
Sure,
write a book and promote a book, right?
sure.
And so I think that there is beyond just the military, it's like starts to give some language around it.
Yes,
And that's why,
yes.
you have to convert it into actual actionable things in business. And one of the other really unique stories that I present in this book is the advent of the M16 rifle, which is everybody knows about the M16.
Sure.
But when it was created, in the start of the Vietnam conflict, it had massive problems in the jungle. It was constantly jamming and malfunctioning to the situation to the point where our own soldiers were throwing it away and using captured, Viet Cong rifles to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was that they weren't being maintained. We did not ship cleaning kits over with the
Okay.
rifles.
Right,
And
right.
so I think it's very applicable in business. I
Yeah.
see all the time that companies we will put some new system in place or some new platform,
Yep.
and then we don't know how to maintain it. We don't hire an administrator. We don't put training in, and then we wonder, well, what happened? I just bought Salesforce.com. Why is it not working?
Right.
Well, did we hire an administrator? Did we hire somebody to help implement it? Did we train
Right.
people? And a lot of times when it's not working, it's no. And so that's where when I would be in a situation and I'm getting pushback, from maybe finance or
Yep.
from some other leaders, like, well, I don't know if we have the money to pay for that training. I use the example of the M16. If it can happen to the United States Army with all their resources, it can happen to
Right.
us. And it's going to fail if we don't train people, if we don't have the right partners to implement it. And generally, people would go, "Oh, I get it. I get it."
Gotcha. Gotcha. I like that. That's a good one. That's a good one. I know we talked about the book, but I want to tell you that the title Never Outmatched. I absolutely love it because of the mindset that's encouraging. Like it's like I can't be beat. So I'm a basketball guy. I love basketball, and Michael Jordan's got this a quote where he says something to the effect that I've never lost a game. I've just run out of time. Right. So
Mm.
it's like I'm absolutely unbeatable. I cannot be stopped. In this instance, I just need more time. And to know that you are in this case, the basketball court is a battlefield. You're going on the basketball court with someone who believes they cannot lose ever. Like, wow. Like to have someone have that as your leader or have that someone by your side. It's just phenomenal. So I just love that mindset that it promotes very, very much.
I love that quote, oddly. I think it's so true. And it gets back to something we were talking about earlier. I mean, you've got teammates that are there to support you. You've got leaders that are there to support you. You've got all the training. You've got all the ability to research. Just knowing yourself that you can figure it out. You can figure it out. And I'm sure Michael Jordan would agree with that because, you've got all these resources around you. Take
Yes.
advantage of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If so regardless if you've got your health practice or you're in marketing directly, if you were to give listeners kind of that one thing that they could start today or implement now to sort of increase their levels of success, outside of picking up a copy of your book, what would you tell them?
I think probably the one strategy that I think is really helpful in business today is called force multiplication. It was something that von Clausewitz, who I referenced earlier, came up with. He came up with the math behind it, and I talk
Okay.
about it in the book. X squared minus y squared equals, your advantage. And I think that in today's digital marketing realm, it's very appropriate. So in the example, if you're gonna write a blog, why not record that interview and put it as a podcast? And while you're doing the podcast, why not throw up two or three cameras and now you've got video to put on YouTube? Why not clip it and put the good parts on TikTok or Reels or Shorts? And then why not take some still imagery and put it on social? Now all of a sudden you have force multiply, which is really what von Clausewitz was getting to. He was talking about going from one soldier versus one soldier, and they just battle it out. And he was
Yeah.
saying, well, let's take that one soldier and put him on a horse. Now we've got speed and maneuverability. And while we've got that one soldier, let's give him not only a sword, but let's give him a carbine. Now he's got multiple weapon systems. And now let's combine arms. That was his idea of
Right.
force multiplication 200 years ago. I've just applied that same thinking to marketing. and all of a sudden you become very budget friendly, oddly, because generally
Mm,
we pay for these things independently. We
yes.
have to have, we have a copywriter that's not connected and they just go write. And then oh, you know what? Let's get a contractor to do a podcast and they go do their thing. Oh, I need video. And we hire a video company. And then, oh, I got to hire my niece to do social. And we pay for it three, four, five times.
Right, right.
No wonder it becomes expensive. No
Yes.
wonder our accounting team is getting mad at us. Nobody will approve it. So
Right.
if you'll use some of the math, and some of the strategy, you can accomplish these amazing things
Yeah.
without breaking the bank.
And part I love around that is it's almost like if you ask the question, well, what else can I do with this? So
Hmm.
this piece of content, what else can I do? Where else can how else can I stretch it out? How many different applicabilities can you make with it? And I just love the way you think. It makes you think differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things is putting math to it. A lot of times in our marketing, a lot of times people want to apply these cognitive biases we talked about, and they
Yep.
want to like talk about, well, I don't like that color, I don't like the font, or I don't like our logo. You know what? I really don't care about that. What I've done is I've created the math.
Yes.
I want to turn marketing into a math problem or a math opportunity. And so I know enough to know that I've hired a graphic designer.
Hmm.
I trust that graphic designer. I've got to make the math work. Are we getting the right amount of phone calls or forms or leads? Am I getting the right kind of assessments? Are we getting the right admissions? I mean, that's where I want to spend my time. I trust the people I put in place,
Yes.
right, to do their jobs. Let me put the math around it. And now all of a sudden, I am dealing with objective decisions versus subjective decisions.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Lee, this has been phenomenal conversation. I've enjoyed our time here together immensely. And before we go, I do want to ask and get your take or maybe your position on what audacious living means to you.
Yeah, I think it's living without fear. That's what I interpret it, which is getting back to the whole Genesis, the title of my book about being never outmatched. I feel like that listeners need to know that it's not always easy. There are going to be gray days, there are going to be cloudy days, but you just have to know that within you, you're going to never be outmatched. And I think one of the first stories I heard when I went to work for Ross Perot was I was his youngest campaign staffer. He told the story that when he left IBM, he was the highest paid salesman. He left IBM because they were capping his bonus, and he started, EDS. It took 72 visits before he got his first sale. I think most people give up before they get to 72. So even for me, like as I'm out here talking about my book and going through the whole process, whenever I feel down, oh my gosh, have I sold enough or I haven't gotten enough interviews, even when I start to question, I just always think back and smile and go, I don't think I've had my 70-second talk yet. I don't think I've had my 70-second pitch. And that's where it really takes a lot of internal fortitude, right? But that's why I want to encourage the audience that just maintain. You will get there because even along the way you're learning things.
Yeah.
You might be shifting your strategy or learning some new things to add to your to your bucket. And I think that's the key message.
It's funny. I was thinking as you're talking about, when I sort of get down or doubt myself, I incorporate a tactic where I celebrate my wins and I
Yes.
keep track of what I've done, and it serves as a reminder as what's got me to the point that I'm at right now, and that even applies to the problems, right? Because the way I see it is I've solved every problem I've had in my life, and I'm here right now as a result of that problem, my efforts. Right, I've solved all the problems. So what's one more? And that's the kind of stuff that I use. I thought about that as you talked about that 70-second, but I like that one too. That's a nice one to keep in mind.
Yep, absolutely.
For listeners, Lee, that want to learn more about you or connect directly with your work or grab a copy of your book, Never Outmatched, where can we send them?
They can go to neveroutmatchedbook.com. That has information about the book. There's some special bonus offers there if people want to buy a book. And then it has the links to your favorite store, whether you want to go to Barnes and Noble or
Cool.
Amazon or Target or Walmart, wherever you like to shop. It has all the links there. And I appreciate your audience supporting the mission that I'm on. And I appreciate the audience being involved in helping. They probably know a vet, out
Yep.
there. And so I'm a volunteer with our Veterans Treatment Court here in Nashville. And so I'm always like doing a plug for them, because there's all sorts of folks out there that you can really have a positive impact on. And so I appreciate people thinking about veterans, that could use a helping hand.
Well, and I'm glad that you made that point. We're also gonna make sure that all the appropriate show links are in the show notes below. So connect with you. I definitely will encourage our listeners to do so. Lee, this has been awesome. I really, really mean that. I've appreciated the things that you shared, but the manner in which you've done so as well. It's really understandable, and taking these, these battlefield tactics and strategies and made them as applicable as possible. So I appreciate that. Congratulations on the book, and thank you again for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Thank you.
We're back. We are here on the podcast. What a powerful and insightful conversation that Lee was. So thank you, Lee. That was fantastic. When I think about the takeaways, one key one for me was that really stands out is a concept again of force multiplications, enhancing effectiveness through strategy, clarity, and collaboration. And just as a coordinated military operation can turn the tide of battle, so too can unified teamwork drive business success. Personally, I loved how Lee emphasized timely decision making. His description of how military training builds urgency and decisiveness really hit home. That mindset isn't just for leaders, it's for anyone striving to make a real impact in their field. His perspective on fostering collaboration between marketing and other departments was also eye-opening. And, it reminds us that when teams move in sync, the results can be extraordinary. For those wanting to connect with Lee directly, of course, you'll find his contact details in the show notes below. We absolutely gotcha. It's important to know that Lee is offering special bonuses for everyone who grabs a copy of his new book, Never Outmatched. Check out the show notes as well for details, and you don't want to miss this exclusive offer. Now, as we wrap up, remember this: just like in military strategy, success in life and business depends on our ability to adapt, collaborate, and execute effectively. By embracing audacity in our decisions and building strong teams around us, we make sure we're never outmatched in our pursuits. Thank you for tuning into this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. If you've enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, or share with others. If you haven't already done so, this is a way we keep inspiring more people to live boldly. Until next time, stay bold, stay brilliant, and keep living audaciously.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion. My words got power, my thoughts have action. Motivation, stay gracious. That's greatness. Be audacious.